Bleach like this is the best to use because it also acts as a toner when you've got it on your hair. We'll just do 2 spoons. It doesn't really matter what size thing you use to measure it, just as long as you use the same for both, because it has to be, for every 1 of bleach is 2 of peroxide. And then if you think you've made it too runny or too thick, you can just add in some more. Using the back of the spoon's better so that you don't get dry bits up in the curve. Just make sure you get it from in the corners of the bowl so you don't have bleach sitting there. I don't know if you can see, but there's like some little lumps in there. The more of them you can get out, the better. Okay, so it's pretty much done. So the consistency should just be like this. You know, it shouldn't be really runny. Even that, you could probably add a little more bleach if you wanted to, but that should really be fine. So it should be like, just like a paste. If it's too runny, it just won't work. Yeah. So just make sure you comb your hair through, because then if you're trying to separate it later when you're trying to get parts like this, if it's all knotted down here, you're going to have to try and get those out. So it's just easy to do it to begin with. Okay, now the best idea is to part your hair where you usually do, so that colours, that's where you know you've got to focus on, because that's where you're going to see all the time. So if I parted my hair at the side, just do it over that way, but for me I go in the middle. If you don't really care what side your hair goes on, just do it from the middle. And we'll make that more even with a sectioning comb later, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now the next part is to put it on the scalp. So you can see she's using a brush because, well, that's the easiest way to do it. But you might have to dip it in a couple times until you know how much you really need on there. If you don't think you've made up enough of the mixture, you can always make some up later. Or if you've made too much, you can just wash it down the sink. You can see that it's touching my scalp there through the middle quite a lot. But for me that is okay, but for some people they'll have a bad reaction to the bleach and they can feel it really, really itching. If you do, just make sure you wipe it off, or that you're conscious not to get it too much on your scalp when you begin with. Next, you'll section that side. Depending on how thick your hair is, depends how big the sections will be. Mine's pretty thin, so we have bigger sections. And then you just start painting it on again. After you've done a couple, just try separating them out again to make sure that you've got all of the roots that you want to bleach. And after you do it a couple of times, you'll get used to how much hair you need to take. So she'll do it a couple of times on this side and then a couple of times on the other. That way, when the bleach is taking the colour out of my head, it'll do it pretty evenly. If we did this whole side of my head first, this side would be a lot lighter than the other side. Okay, so now she's going to flip it back the other way. Because it'll be a bit messy to start off with, but because you've already got those sections there and they're already pasted together, they'll move pretty easily. So you can see some of the bleach is pushed through to the other side, that's fine. And as you can see, she's just making sure she only really gets it on the colour. It is better to go a little bit further than you think you should than a little bit less, because otherwise you'll end up with your bleached hair, then you'll end up with some brown, and then you'll end up with the blonde again. So it's better to have a little bit of a lighter blonde than to have brown mixed in there. When she gets towards the back, she's not fully doing it, but just a little bit, like making sure she goes all the way to the back. Holding the sections down is a good idea, because otherwise when you're pulling the brush back, it'll pick up little parts of hair and it'll start going all over the place and you can get bleach mixed in with it and it just becomes really frustrating. Just dip into there so they can see like how much you take. So push up against the side to make it flat, and about that. Now it looks like a lot, but a lot of it will get pushed towards the end of the brush if you turn it over. You can see that where she used last time, it's been pushed up into the upper bristles, so having a bit much on there is okay. Okay, so now she's done a couple on each side. She's done about halfway down my head on each side. She's going to do the back as well, to make sure that some of it doesn't turn quicker than the other parts. So the back of the head can be a bit difficult, especially because of the crown. So you probably want to do smaller width sections. Don't worry if you think you're getting it on some of the hair that's already flipped up on top here. Just as long as it's not big clumps of it, it'll be fine. It's also a good idea to wear an old t-shirt, or if you get bleach on your fingers, wash it off pretty much straight away, or it'll start to make it white and flaky. And then just do that for a couple rows. Beautiful. Okay. So now I'm going to flip it all back. Don't worry if some of your already blonded hair is touching bleach, because it's not enough for you to tell if it was to bleach some of it. So now she'll probably just go through like checking parts of it to make sure that we've got everywhere. When you're doing the hair, if you're taking sections and you're not sure if it's thin enough or thick enough, or if you're not sure if the brown you can see that you're painting the bleach on is the brown of the section or the brown that's already underneath it on a different section, hold it up in the air and then you'll be able to tell if the bleach has reached the end of your roots or not. So if I held up like this section, you can see that there's no brown there, that's not touched. And just make sure you get all around here too. Some people will get a little bit red from the bleach. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But it's better to just have a little bit of an irritation than to have brown at the front. And then just keep checking it probably every 5 to 10 minutes. Because as it dries, as the bleach dries, it lifts away from the scalp. And then depending on the weather or how hot you run a temperature, bleach, the way it reacts is by heat. So if it's a cold day, it may take a bit longer. If it's a really hot day, it may happen pretty quickly. And then depending on like how hot your skin is as well. But the bleach, the bleach will start to lift up from your scalp. So then sometimes you can see parts that you've missed, but it should be pretty good.